in the follow up to the Les Mis story, like that's how JD Vance sort of compartmentalized his participation in a musical. But we all know the big dog DJT is a huge fan of musical theaters. He loves Broadway, and I guess this is what holds it all together is that Trump manages to be so authentically full of shit all the time that like these little like deviations from who you think he is just glides over like his love of musical theater and his like genuine appreciation for like Queenie stuff.
Mhm.
So Felix, the follow up here is that Trump was asked going into the Kennedy Center like if he's seen Les Mis before, and he says yes, he had. And the reporter asked him, "Do you identify more with Jean Valjean or with Javert?" And Trump said, "That's tough. I don't know." I mean, you think like if you're familiar with the musical and like the basic outline of Jean Valjean and Javert, Trump would obviously want to identify with Jean Valjean, right? Like the man who's been unfairly prosecuted just simply for stealing a crust of bread to feed his starving family. And Javert, that would be the big DC Democrats.
Yeah, that's Robert Mueller.
Yeah.
I mean, Jean Valjean, like, he is, he is like what JFK Jr. is in QAnon mythos. But
he moved the whole ox cart by himself. He's the strongest man in France.
Yeah, I can't actually, I have trouble thinking of characters that are like less like Trump than Javert. Javert's very austere. He was born inside a jail. He's like singularly dedicated to like the law.
He cares about the law as like the only moral yardstick, whereas Trump is just basically sees it just as an impediment to his will.
And Javert's the end of Javert's story is like, oh my God, I can't square like morality going against the law. Have I wasted my whole life, or have I broken my code? The one thing I set out to do, I have to kill myself. And like, if Donald Trump had like a moment of crisis like that, he would call Don Jr. into the room and shoot him in the head, and then like go back to work.
When he was asked about like why they're pulling all the people out of the Middle East, and he gave like, sometimes I think Trump does this like coquettish, coy, almost like kind of secrety sexy thing where he'll be like, "Oh, I don't know, you'll have to see." You know what I mean? Like, like, who do you identify more with, Valjean or Javert? And he's like, "I don't know, good question." Like, he's like a 79-year-old huge fat ass, but somebody's like, "What do you think of this?" And he's like, "You'll have to find out." Like, what the fuck are you doing, man? Sometimes I think he is just so goddamn stupid that he doesn't have an answer, but other times I think maybe he thinks he has one, but he's playing the media in that, like, I don't know, you'll have to wait and see. It's like, what are you going to come out in a fucking negligee, dude? Just tell me what the fuck tell me what's happening. I'm sick of this.
I wonder what his favorite musical number from Les Mis is. Who Am I? Stars. The one where they all sing about the. Do you hear the people sing?
I think I Dreamed
Castle
a Dream,
in the Clouds.
Yeah. I think he likes I Dreamed a Dream because my favorite thing that he ever said during the 2020 election when he said, "What if I got in one of those trucks and just drove away?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
He gets very wistful sometimes.
What was that like? How do you deal with stress? And he was like, "I tell myself it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, when I die, all of this stuff, it doesn't matter. It will essentially have amounted to nothing. Like when I'm gone, like I think he likes musicals in the same way, like guys, like whiskey. Like it's just a thing that he does because he's supposed to do it. Same with with being the president in general. You know what I mean? I don't think he's got his heart in it. He's just,
but if you're a cool alpha male, like you're not supposed to be into musical theater. You're supposed to be into whiskey.
But that's the thing. That's the thing, though. He didn't come from a milieu of jujitsu and Black Rifle golf. Like he predates that. And when he was like coming up in the early 70s and mid 70s, the cool thing to do was to be like seen at a musical with like a Vanderbilt,
a 16-year-old Italian model or something, like
and Roy Cohn.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Well, this is like a follow up to Trump's interest in the arts and culture. This is a piece in the Daily Beast. It says, President Donald Trump has claimed he was told as a child that he had a brilliant aptitude for music and that he could have been a flutist if he pursued it. In an interview Tuesday on Pod Force One, Trump told New York Post columnist Miranda Devine that she was the first to ask him whether he had ever played an instrument. I played, like, for a very short periods of time, the flute. Could you believe that? I had flute lessons, Trump said, later calling it an unusual instrument. Can you believe it? I could have been a flutist, and I didn't particularly like it. I don't know. It wasn't for me. Trump claimed that when he was 11 or 12, an aptitude test revealed music as a top option, which didn't sit well with his father. I went through this process for a couple of days, and they came up to my father. They said, "Your son is brilliant at music. He can be an incredible musician," according to Trump. This is not what my father wanted to hear. This was not the greatest thing ever. But it's funny because my father would not have thought about music from me, but I do. I think I have an ear for music, he continued. They play a note like on the piano, and then I remember it to this day. And they'd ask you other questions, and then they'd play notes later on, and they'd say, which is the note that we played from an hour ago? And I'd be like, get it right, I guess. But did he have like some sort of Bene Gesserit test for being a musician before he took a single lesson? And they're like, your son has the mouth of a flautist.
He's saying that he has perfect pitch, which, I mean, again, remembering my favorite Trump things, he did a similar thing where he said, do you remember when he said he was at one point the best baseball player in the state of New York? Like, I mean, I think someone would have to find, I don't think things like this are like a total lie. I think there's like some element of truth to it. Like that maybe I don't know that he had perfect pitch, but maybe he was good at identifying notes when he took a career aptitude, a very intricate career aptitude thing when he was a kid. But there's the Trumpian flair to it where it's like, oh yeah, no, when I'm just hanging around and people play notes for me, as you do with your friends.
I go, that's an F major. I said F sharp.
Yeah. An hour later, oh no, remember that F major?
I also too, like, again, it's like he has to have always been the best at whatever thing they're currently being talked about, whatever's being talked about. At some point, like the baseball thing, like he had to be, like, whenever he shows up at the UFC events, which, by the way, like, he balances the musical thing with like the UFC, public events or whatever. And I feel like it's like his mana where or his humors rather, like he has to balance being like a Queenie New York liberal with like the neo, like you said, Felix, like the neo reactionary interests, which are like jujitsu and Lex Friedman and like crypto or whatever the fuck. Because I think he did that interview and then the next day was at the UFC event. So it's this forever balancing of like, back in the days when rich guys were into arts and stuff as a sign of like wealth. Well, they've abandoned all that now. And now they're just into, jujitsu and different types of coffee.
The strange thing is that he has always kind of done that. Like the reason that he's so closely associated with the UFC, he was a very early patron of them. He wasn't an investor, but he hosted them at the Taj Mahal when it was very difficult for them to get venues because they had just recently been declared de facto
holding fights on a barge in international waters to avoid regulations.
Yes, but during the 90s and early 2000s, he was balancing that thing of like sort of play acting as this guy who is rich off real estate. But in my childhood, the things I would associate with Donald Trump, like the things I'd see him on TV doing, were like, all right, Fox is hosting something called the Muffin Top Contest, and Donald Trump is one of the judges. Like a 3-hour event. Who's the hottest single mom who killed one of her kids? And like hosted the Casey
by Anthony
Donald
lookalike
Trump.
contest.
Yeah, just like the most ignominious, like low class things. He was always doing that, but also being like, I've actually seen the real Michelangelo paintings. They don't let other people see.
I love when one of the
and I drew them from memory.